So I'm delighted to be joined by MLB.com's Thomas Harding on this first ever Rockies UK podcast. Thomas, thanks a lot for taking your time to come on today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I mean, to be on in the UK, you kidding me? I'm enjoying this.
So we'll talk about the UK before we even talk about Rockies. You're a Manchester United fan, it appears. How did that happen?
I'll tell you what, I've been kind of half watching soccer for a while. Then I watched the World Cup, and I'm like, I've got to pick a team. So season starts, and I'm looking and I'm thinking, what team am I going to follow? Who am I going to support? And I was watching the craziness with Jose Mourinho, and I'm like, if anything, the stories are crazy enough, so I'll follow them. And then you just keep watching. I mean, you wake up early in the morning, you get those Premier League mornings on NBC, and you enjoy it. It's great. I'm sure that I'm enjoying the Reds as much as people over there are enjoying the Rockies, the people that follow you.
Yeah, so hopefully the Rockies have a better season than what Man United have been having, but
I don't know. Hey, they've turned it off. I mean, it's kind of like the Rockies
yeah.
in June. Remember, in June, people thought it was done, it was over, there was nothing to live for, and then all of a sudden they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, they have picked it up a bit, to be fair, but hopefully that ends on this weekend when you play Liverpool. So
Big match, big match. I'll be up for that.
But we'll get on to talk about the Rockies, and we'll start off with the off-season. Obviously, the headline signing, as you will, is Daniel Murphy, who's going to come in and play first base, and then Mark Reynolds was brought back as well. But some fans have seen it as a lack of movement from the Rockies. How would you perceive this off-season?
It is a lack of movement from the Rockies, but the Rockies aren't about making moves in the offseason. They develop people through their own system. If you look at the star players for this club, Nolan Arenado, Charlie Blackmon, Trevor Story, the pitchers, Kyle Freeland, German Marquez, guys like that, John Gray, Tyler Anderson, they all came through the system. So that's the way this team is built. They're built to come through the system. Costs a little bit less money there, but they do want to hold on to some of their top players. So that's the way they do it. They had the opportunity to get two or three other guys out there, but they chose to get one because if you get Daniel Murphy to play first base, you could have guys like Ryan McMahon and Garrett Hampson, the prospect Brendan Rodgers or Pat Valleca, they move in at first base. So rather than spend a whole lot of money on free agency, that's the way the Rockies do things.
Yeah, and so all the squad have been together now in spring training for 4 days or so now. It's raining today, I saw. What's it been like down there so far?
Well, it's interesting because you hear those dates, pitchers and catchers report on one date, then the full squad reports a week later. But because this is such a nice facility here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and the weather is so nice, guys have been here for a long time. Some guys do their entire off-season training at this facility. So it's not that big a deal that all the guys are together because for the most part, guys have been together since, I would say, the first of the year, and some guys since even the end of last season.
Yeah, now the games obviously for the Rockies start on Saturday. It kind of feels there's like two real positions to be decided: is second base and the fifth spot in the pitching rotation. Who would you see on the starting roster? Do you think will slot in at second base and the fifth rotation spot?
Well, I think first, if you look at second base, there are a number of ways to divide up that job. DJ LeMahieu played that position so well for years that you just simply put him in stone, and he was there for year after year, getting Gold Glove awards and everything else. Right now, they're pretty young there. So Ryan McMahon has a lot of power. People believe that he's going to hit some home runs at this level. He has a shot. Garrett Hampson, who has really good speed and is a good defender, he also has a shot. There's a possibility you could platoon them, meaning McMahon being a left-handed hitter, he faces the right-handed pitchers and vice versa with Hampson being right-handed facing lefties. Brendan Rodgers, people are very excited about him. He was the #1 pick a few years ago. best prospect in the organization, according to MLB Pipeline, which does the ratings on our site, and also the number 10 guy overall. He's in that. And don't forget about Pat Valaika. Guy came off the bench, hit a few home runs, drove in a lot of runs 2 years ago, did not have a good year last year. So that's what I was talking about earlier, is that instead of going out and signing a more expensive veteran, they feel like there's talent to do this from within. So the way second base could work out, I think with Rogers being so young in his career, if he blows everybody away and becomes the everyday starting second baseman, that would be fine. I think that there's a possibility there would be some combination of McMahon and one of the right-handed hitters. And Hampson, who came up last year, was very impressive for this team.
And then you've got Bettis and Senzatella perhaps in the fight for the 5th spot in the rotation. Who do you think will start the season in that spot?
Well, that also will be an interesting situation because, first of all, a lot of times you don't get through spring training with everybody being healthy. The Rockies have been very lucky in that respect. So if someone gets hurt, I think it kind of upsets things a little bit more. But let's look at that spot in the rotation. Bettis, before the blister on his right middle finger, which really affects how you throw a ball, he was having one heck of a season. But at the end, Senzatella, once he was all healthy, because he had a couple of shoulder issues, he ended up starting the game in the postseason. So I think that'll be a close matchup. But also, don't forget about Jeff Hoffman, the big guy that they got in the trade with Troy Tulowitzki with the Blue Jays. Hoffman's throwing the ball a lot harder, and if he gets his secondary pitch, which is a late breaking pitch, kind of a curveball slider or something in between, but it breaks real late and real sharply. If he gets that, he competes hard. When I look at the roster, I see Bettis being able to fit into this spot because they also are pretty crowded in the bullpen, and you could use Senzatella at AAA to begin the year, and that way you hold on to him and he's ready if something happens in the rotation. So I could see that happening. I think that Bettis is the leader of this group, but Senzatella has great talent, and so does Hoffman. I wouldn't necessarily put anything in ink right now, though, because you just don't know how injuries are going to sort out when the year starts.
And then on the in the outfield, we've got Desi's going to play centre field, and then Blackman and Dahl in the corners. And the 4th outfield spot, it's Raimel Tapia's kind of last chance saloon for him, and Cargo is still out on the market. Is there any possibility that the Rockies look to bring Cargo back, or do you think they're happy with Tapia?
I think that with Tapia being in his last year of minor league options and they know what he can do and they've seen it at the minor league level, they're probably going to go in that direction. Carlos Gonzalez is most likely looking for a place where he could end up starting, and certainly injuries, whether here or elsewhere, will play a part in that. But what David Dahl did last year at the end of the season, and you look at the snippet of time in 2016, he looks like a real impact player. So if you're Carlos Gonzalez, maybe you're looking for a place with more playing time than here, where David Dahl is young. He fits in the profile here, and it looks like they're going to go with him.
And you touched on the bullpen a moment ago. There's obviously a few question marks over there, losing Ottavino, who was kind of the key man in that spot last season, and Brian Shaw and Jake McGee had their struggles. Obviously, the Rockies will need at least one of them to bounce back. How do you see the bullpen shaping up?
Yeah, the bullpen, I think, is a real interesting animal around here, because what happens as the season goes on is the manager has to figure out which guys he trusts with the ball late in the game. And Ottavino was part of that. He was the main setup guy for Wade Davis. But what happened over the course of the year, even with Brian Shaw and Jake McGee struggling and Mike Dunn hurt, they were able to make a trade for Sungwon Oh with the Toronto Blue Jays. He came in at the end of the season. And also Scott Oberg really developed into one heck of a pitcher. In fact, O and Oberg pitched better than Ottavino toward the end of the season. So it would be nice, to get that to get a good year out of a Brian Shaw, out of a Jake McGee or Mike Dunn, who looks like he's healthy. But don't forget about Chris Russin, one of the better pitchers in the National League in 2016, and he struggled, had some injuries last season. If you get him back, he's a guy who could pitch more than one inning. He could face right-handed and left-handed batters, and that takes some of the pressure off some of the other guys in that bullpen.
And who is one guy that not a lot of people are talking about at the moment that you think could come out and maybe surprise quite a few people in spring training?
When I look at it, there's a guy, Jesus Tinoco, who throws the ball really hard, had a good Arizona Fall League. I think that he's a guy who could push hard for a job. The other one is one we've already talked about. I think Garrett Hampson, the way that he approaches his at-bats, the way that he can play several different positions, and his speed, I believe that he could be an impact player for this club, whether it's in when he's starting or coming off the bench. So those are two guys I'm looking at. Tinoco in the bullpen, because he could certainly push for a job if there are injuries or struggles there right now. But during the course of the season, watch for Garrett Hampson and see what happens with him.
And looking ahead to the season as a whole, the Pecota predictions had the Rockies at 85 wins, which I think was one game out of the NL wildcard spot. Is that something similar to where you see the Rockies?
I actually see them in the playoffs one way or the other. Can they defeat the Los Angeles Dodgers? If you look on paper, the Dodgers are the better team. They have a few more stars. I think that part of it is where they pitch, but their pitching looks better on paper. However, you look at last season when the Dodgers traded for as many starting level players as they could get their hands on, and the Rockies took them to a 163rd game, a tiebreaker to win the division. So I think the Rockies are good enough to compete there. One of the projections, and it sounds like you were looking at, I think, Baseball Prospectus there with the 85 wins. The issue that I have with that is you have a couple of teams well over 90 wins in the East. I just don't think the two teams are going to win that many games in one division. I do think that the West is a two-team race between the Rockies and the Dodgers, but I don't see where two teams in the East are going to win so many games that it pushes the Rockies out of the playoff picture.
Yeah, and could you give one bold prediction for the Rockies in 2019?
Okay, bold prediction, and it's going to be that they're going to have two all-star starting pitchers, German Marquez and Kyle Freeland. Kyle Freeland had the better year last year in terms of the wins, but if you look at Marquez with the strikeouts, so a club record for that, I think you're looking at two guys that are very good pitchers. So that's going to be my bold prediction. I know the Rockies expect better out of John Gray than they got last season, and certainly he's done the things that are necessary to get there. We'll just have to see the performance on the field.
Yeah, talking about John Gray, he's had issues controlling his weight, it seems, and a lot of people have been saying perhaps he's mentally weak. What's your take on all that?
I think he's a pitcher who had a bad year last season. I mean, it sometimes comes down to that. I look at the career arcs of so many different players, and a lot of people have a bad year early in their careers. I think that there were some things that he can learn and adjust to. He was in the big leagues fairly quickly after college. So we'll see. My key is I don't think a whole lot of players come in, and especially pitchers in Denver come in and they come in like gangbusters and have consistent careers throughout. Usually there's going to be some struggle there. Now, we talked about the weight issue. What happens is he doesn't really eat a lot during the season. He's got to correct that issue. He did come to camp a little bit more muscular. He also learned some things about his pitches. When we get into the mentally weak or whatever, I think a lot of that is, whether it's fan or sports writer, we're trying to psychoanalyze there. I mean, but usually it comes down to something that you're doing or not doing on the field. Are you executing this pitch here? As far as physically is concerned, are you eating enough before you pitch? I mean, which is something that sometimes happens with pitchers. If you correct those things, then let's see how you perform on the field.
And could you give one bold prediction for Major League Baseball in general?
Major League Baseball in general, I'm going to say that even though it's become this arms race kind of between the Red Sox and the Yankees, the Houston Astros, because of what they've built, are going to come out of the American League as the champion and have a chance to win the World Series again.
And they're going to be playing the Rockies in the World Series, are they?
I know the people over there are hoping so we'll see what happens.
And how much are you looking forward for the games to just get started now on Saturday?
I'll tell you what. Right now I'm sitting here saying I actually sent a note to my editor today saying we need a baseball game because this is getting a bit boring here. And as soon as that starts, I'm ready for the regular season. I was talking with some of the other writers here, and I just look forward to a long regular season. It's 162 games. There are snippets of time where a team looks great. There are times during the year where you think there's no possible way they're going to do anything. Then it all reverses itself. I like the arc of a regular season.
And finally, could you just, give yourself a little promotion where people can follow you on social media, etc.?
Yeah, well, first of all, go to Rockies.com. That's where all my stuff appears. You look at Twitter here, which is at Harding at MLB. There are some underscores in there between the Harding and the at and the MLB. Well, I'll tell you what, just plug my name in, Thomas Harding. I also have a Facebook page for my work stuff. So if you search me on Facebook, you can find me there. And every now and then I'm on the MLB Network talking Rockies, standing there at Coors Field, holding the microphone, smiling to the cameras. So there are lots of places to find me, and I really hope that all of the Rockies UK people do find me, ask me questions, and have a good time following baseball.
All right, Thomas, thanks a lot for coming on the show, and hope you have a good rest of your week and that you enjoy watching some baseball this weekend.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to some baseball. That's Saturday, and Man U Liverpool Saturday, right?
Yeah,
Where's that
hopefully.
Sunday?
I think it'll be Sunday. I think.
Oh, good. Okay, so I can cover that first game, then wake up really early Scottsdale time and watch the Reds. Glory, glory, Man United.
Oh, I hope not. No, we can't be having that. Yeah, it is Sunday. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So you get a nice early rise to watch Man United get beat.
No doubt. Oh, well, I don't know about getting beat, but I'll watch it. How about
Yeah. Right. Right. Thanks a lot.
Hey, thanks for having me.